Did any frauds get relegated, or did we end up with gatekeepers that stopped the promotion? And did the midseason LCQ show us signs of hope for a certain Korean team? Well, let's find out. Hey folks, my name is Apostle, and this is Watching Overwatch, also known as WoW, the show that tells you everything you need to know about what's been going on in Overwatch Esports. Over the past couple weeks here, outside of the regular season, we've still had some matches with pretty big impacts, and first and foremost is the promotion and relegation. If you're out of the loop, for North America and EMEA, that means that the bottom two teams to perform in their respective regions regular season were actually dropped down into this tournament, whereas the top two teams from the FaceIt leagues were brought up to play here. And then these four teams battle it out to see who's going to be the one to move on to the next stage of the Overwatch Champion Series. Of course, we'll take a look at the FaceIt Masters seasons that decided the teams who made it there in the first place. And as mentioned, of course, the last chance qualifiers, where names big and small got to get up on stage and hopefully put their best foot forward. At least I think most teams did. Before we get into that though, one big piece of OWCS news, which I'm sure you've seen already in game, the official cosmetics are finally out, with skin packs for each of the partner teams, some cosmetic bundles for the top three of China as well. We finally have ways to directly support our favorite teams. And personally, I'm a huge fan of the player icons and the name cards and the sprays especially, because I come from the Overwatch League era where everything was just logo.png, solid color background. And this is like actual custom art that's unique for each team, showing personality and creativity. I absolutely love it. 75% of the revenue from these bundles goes toward OWCS, so hopefully this is just the start of the partner program really showing its worth. As usual though, we have the must-watch matches, which are my picks for the games that are worth going back to check out, even if you did miss them live. From North America, take a look at the FaceIt Season 5 Finals, where we got an incredible match between Dreamland and Young and Beautiful. Two teams with kind of similar cute aesthetics, but they actually gave us some pretty high-octane gameplay. From EMEA, make sure you check out Team Anomaly versus Dip vs 100 Gorillas, a match that, without spoiling too much, you should definitely watch if you want to know what's going to happen for both the next stage of FaceIt Masters and OWCS. And then finally, from the last chance qualifiers, Team Vision versus Team Falcons. Although personally, I would have preferred Zeta to face Vision, this was a great watch nonetheless, especially as a gauge of both those teams' power levels. But anyway, now let's jump into things and take a look at how the season went for the FaceIt League Season 5 of EMEA. To start, we'll go over some of the more important teams here. First off, Team Vision, and I'm sure most people have heard what's going on with Vision already, but in case you missed it, let's do a quick recap here. Team Vision was in Stage 1 of OWCS, but they ended up falling to the promotion and relegation, and they just didn't make it out, which means they got sent back here to the FaceIt Master League. But they made some pretty big changes to their roster to help them get back up, including signing Choi Se-won off of Rock Esports at the time, and the GOAT himself, Violet from Zeta Division. Obviously, it's an insane move to sign former Overwatch League champion to a FaceIt Masters EMEA team, but Team Vision just worked some magic to make that happen, I guess. Next up, we have Anomaly, who started the season as Reds Esports. Now, this one also needs a bit of an explanation, as this is a spot that was originally held by Sakura Esports after they got relegated from OWCS Stage 1. But then Sakura Esports ends up going to North America, so that spot there ends up getting acquired by Reds Esports. But then just over halfway through the regular season, Reds Esports team was actually acquired by Team Anomaly here, and that included a big change to the coaching and managing staff. But the players did stay the same, and this is a team that is pretty stacked actually when it comes to player talent. They featured Zoro, Crocs, and EGS, who are all very talented players that have made appearances in FaceIt Masters League regularly, and even OWCS. But then they actually pulled a bit of a wildcard signing as they picked up King, former Vancouver Titans player who has been playing in NA looking amazing just a stage prior. And one more team here with an asterisk, Quick Esports. This team started this season as the unsigned Gibble Mirai, but after Quick's time in OWCS was cut short, they picked up that roster and just got right back in the game there in the FaceIt League. Now, some other returning names from FaceIt Season 4 include Arius, 0907, Wasp No, SR Peakcheck, Gas T3, and Dreamlight. But now, as we look at the standings here, we do see some surprises. SR Peakcheck find themselves having a pretty rough season, despite signing legendary streamer ML7, and more importantly, they signed Sauna, who ended up there after Gen G gave him the boot. They actually struggled to find success, ultimately missing out on the top 8. And if you look farther down, we'll see Super Shy, who recently found a first place finish in the FaceIt Expert division. So a pretty decent finish considering how they fought their way there in the first place, but at the bottom you may recognize TA, who finished 3rd in FaceIt Masters Season 4. Interestingly, this team just didn't have a roster. I'm not sure how they were even considered participants, but with no roster, every team just got an automatic win against them. They basically forfeited every match, so bit of a weird case, but it's not a true downfall like the standings alone might imply. In the top 8 though, things were pretty even, with places 5 to 8 all getting a tied score throughout the season, but I do want to shout out Dreamlight in particular for getting a plus 12 map differential and potentially being the strongest of those 4. Outside of that, Quick Esports, despite them grabbing a team full of rookie players, ended up finding good success, finding a top 4 finish, and Anomaly and Vision both find a top 3 spots as expected. But it's actually Reyes who makes a really flashy result as they snag the number 2 spot, actually having been able to beat Anomaly's roster in the head-to-head. Now for the playoffs, things actually got pretty interesting in 2 particular ways here. First off, Team Vision actually lost a series to Anomaly in the upper bracket in a match that lit up the EMEA Overwatch Twitter as Violet and Choice1 got smoked by the scrappy Europeans. And the other noteworthy thing here is Dreamlight had a pretty insane playoffs run that included beating the number 2 seed twice and looking even more dominant the second time and handily beating 0907 as well. The 3-1 losses against Anomaly and Vision did knock them out, but to be able to snag a top 3 finish like that, you gotta commend them. Of course, the finals did see Vision and Anomaly face off yet again. This time, Violet locked in though, and Vision was able to make it a quick 4-0, which did kind of make a statement with that pretty dominant win that whatever happened before, it was just a fluke, maybe Violet got money, whatever. This time, no plans to let it happen again. That led us to the EMEA promotion and relegation, where we got Dip versus 100 Gorillas, and Frosttails, who got put on the block against the challengers of Vision and Anomaly. Right off the bat, the challengers got to work, with Anomaly beating Dip versus Gorillas in a 3-1, and Vision beating Frosttails in a 3-0. And that led to a rematch of our 2 FaceIt teams, and this time, Anomaly was a little stronger, managing to take a map and even forcing some great overtime rounds on Circle Royale, but Vision was just a bit too strong, and they grabbed their spot in OWCS. Back in the lower, Dip vs Gorillas ended up putting a stop to the Frosttails time here with a 3-1 game that was actually closer than the scoreline would imply. This was very back and forth, with the most dominant map actually being Frosttails' sweep of Atlas. Despite that, Dip was too strong, he held the line for his team, but sadly, they weren't able to do the same in their next game against Anomaly, who just flipped the script and found a 3-1 win over them, including one of the most one-sided push games we've ever seen. Anomaly just looked like a clear step above, but hopefully that does mean we'll see some great matches out of them as they also punch their ticket to OWCS Stage 3. Anyway, that's everything for EMEA, so now let's jump back to North America and see what went down here. The first thing you'll notice here looking at the participants is several teams are either sister teams or academy teams, like Iliad, Artemis, and Helios, Tanuki Tapire and Tanuki Esports, Shikigami Midori, Extinction Zero, the Dill Dragons. Of course, we do also have our other no-names in Amplify and Shikigami, appearing here after being unable to survive Stage 1's promotion and relegation. But we do also have some older names making a reappearance, with Dreamland coming back in here to take Extinction's former roster core because Extinction the org moved into OWCS. And then in a surprising move, Young and Beautiful showed up here again. And for anyone new to the scene, Young and Beautiful hails from the golden age of contenders way back in the day, kind of known for being a staple of EU. People like Maimon, KSA, Vestola, Skyrepa, Sana, they've all had stints on Young and Beautiful in the past. This classic name reemerges here in the North American FaceIt League, where they acquire the spot and roster of Regen, who themselves picked up the roster of Avidity Ice. And while not quite as known, it's worth mentioning Uni Academy, who took over the spot of Rad Academy, as well as Alternate Esports, who took over the spot of Siena Heights University, which was one of the few collegiate teams that had still been participating outside of collegiate tournaments. But now, as we look at the regular season, we can see competition was pretty stiff, especially early on. Compared to previous seasons where we had the clear dominant winner at the top of the leaderboard, Season 5 wasn't quite as cut and dry. Starting from the bottom though, the first thing you'll notice is Tanuki Esports and Amplify, both orgs that despite having made it to OWCS before, after several changes to the team, just have not been able to recapture that success, which means Tanuki will actually be automatically relegated into FaceIt Expert, and Amplify will be playing in the relegation matches for their survival. But other than that, no real huge surprises or disappointments in the bottom 8. In the top half, we have Shikigami, who despite being a shadow of their former self, are able to find a top 6 spot. Above them, we have Emote Down Mid finished with a 10-5 record. which interestingly is actually identical to their Season 4 run, though they did improve their map diff. Tanuki Tapire, despite being the sister team to Tanuki Esports, they have a far better run, and they also make an appearance in the top 5. And then we come to Young and Beautiful, which, when you consider the context of their formerly being Avidity Ice, have seen pretty explosive improvement, as they went from 10th in Season 4's regular season to locking in a top 3 spot. Honestly, that's like an inherited will diff. The Young and Beautiful legacy would not settle for anything less than greatness. And finally, we have Uni Academy and Dreamland, both teams essentially repeating their success as well, now that Supernova and Dildux are out of the way. But Dreamland are just a bit too strong. Now, you may be looking at Dreamland's 13-2 record and assume it was Uni Academy and Young and Beautiful that took those 2 games, right? But no, actually, those losses came from Shiki Midori and Emote down mid early on in the season. Dreamland actually 3-0'd Uni and Young and Beautiful in their regular season meetup, so it just goes to show how strong they actually are. Moving on to the playoffs, things went as expected, with our top 4 all taking wins in the first round, although Dreamland did get taken to map 5 by Shikigami Midori, which maybe implies a bit of shakiness from the number 1 seed. In the next round, Young and Beautiful continued to show their skill as they beat Uni Academy in a 3-1, able to finally settle the score given that they both ended with equal records. And that was a result that was mirrored by Dreamland's victory over Emote down mid on the other side of the bracket. It was in the lower bracket though that Shikigami Midori came alive in a big way, as they beat Tanuki Tapire in a map 5 and then found another map 5 victory against none other than Uni Academy. And this was arguably the biggest upset of the playoffs, being the number 8 seed compared to what we thought was a solidly top 3 team. And they actually continued to look strong in their match against Emote down mid, but unfortunately, Shikigami Midori's run finally ended in what was admittedly yet another map 5 banger. But Emote down mid just capitalized on the fact that they finally ran out of steam, and Midori's run ended this time with a 3-2 loss. Back in the upper, Dreamland and Young and Beautiful battled it out, but it was Young and Beautiful who turned the tables, able to find a 3-2 win of their own. And for anyone curious, this was the 6th map 5 match of the playoffs, which I think is the most I've ever seen in just a single bracket. And it goes to show just how close these teams are playing each other. In the lower though, Dreamland did close the gap as they beat Emote down mid with a 3-1 and got back into the finals to rematch against Young and Beautiful. And just like the rest of the playoffs, these finals were incredibly close, the pure definition of a back and forth match. But in the end, Dreamland was able to find the edge and find the win in a 4-3 game. But genuinely, this was an incredible game of Overwatch. We saw both teams really trying to flex their flexibility with a ton of variety in comps from map to map, especially on Gibraltar. That was my personal favorite, with Hella showing off on the Wrecking Ball. Just a super solid series that did not disappoint between these two. Of course, things didn't end there for these two teams, as their next challenge would come in the promotion relegation, where they would face off against Supernova and Dildux. Now, for Young and Beautiful, things got off to a rough start, and they took a 3-1 loss against Supernova. The new champs, though, Dreamland, they were able to grind out a close 3-2 win against the Dildux, showing that they didn't arrive to this stage by accident. Unfortunately, Dreamland was not able to take out Supernova, who found yet another 3-1 win, largely in part to the Flex DPS Ryan stepping up and having a brilliant performance. He just looked incredible. And in the process, that allowed Supernova to hold on to their spot in OWCS. For our other defending team, Dildux, they now had their life on the line against Young and Beautiful in the lower bracket, but it seems that motivation was all they needed, as they had yet another map 5, but this time, they were the ones to come out on top with a 3-2 win over Young and Beautiful. But the Ducks, they didn't stop there. They took that momentum into their next match, and they absolutely blitzed Dreamland, finding a 3-0 win. Shout out to PDK with back-to-back MVP performances, and Dildux, of course, for also managing to once again earn their place in OWCS. And of course, this marks the first time in OWCS history that the OWCS teams in promotion and relegation have actually kept their spots rather than losing to the FaceIt challengers. Now, granted, we have only had 2 stages, right? But still, I saw some people who were worried that maybe this ends up becoming a revolving door, or alternatively, it's just a locked one, but thankfully, it seems this won't be the case. As for Dreamland and Young and Beautiful, despite a lot of improvement, Supernova and Dildux were good enough to beat them in the last FaceIt season, and it kind of seems like that hasn't changed yet. Despite the pretty cutthroat competition that we had in North America, they'll still need to grow a little more to beat the newfound gatekeepers. Anyway, that covers everything about FaceIt and promotion and relegation, so now for something completely different, the Midseason Championship Last Chance Qualifiers. This was the open tournament that anyone could join to try and get into the championship, provided you were willing to buy a ticket to get to the LAN. And honestly, there's not going to be a ton to talk about here, since those requirements mean that 90% of the teams were probably just a bunch of like Saudi Arabian groups of friends joining for fun, and they did get decimated by any of the more serious teams. The group stage was a lot of 3-0s. Even Cold Metal, who made the trip over from Pacific, they were able to look like a top 4 team there against the competition. Once we got to the playoffs, the 3-0 trend continued, with Zeta, Falcons, Vision, and a Saudi team called Bright Future all pretty easily beating the competition. Now, credit where credit is due. Bright Future, they did kind of put themselves on the map in this tournament, with a roster of players that have apparently been around in the Saudi E-League from what I understand, but notably a player named Khaled really showed off here, showing some very slick Genji gameplay in match after match, and genuinely, he could be a name we start to see more often if his performance here is something that could be relied on. Bright Future did get put into the ground by Zeta Division, which, I mean, thank goodness, because if Zeta lost to a random Saudi team, their legacy is just cooked. And on the other side of the bracket, we got Team Falcons versus Team Vision, which actually somehow ended up being the closest match of the tournament. Now, Violet, I'll admit, he did fight tooth and nail, and even Choisawan, that dude was ready for this smoke against Proper. But I think the biggest thing was actually their tank player Tama, who honestly looked solid and held his own even against someone in Hanbin. If Tama's performance here is an indicator of what we'll get in Stage 3 of OWCS, definitely keep an eye on him. That being said, Falcons did obviously take the win 3-1 in the end. Violet's Ilyari on Circuit Royale was a little bit of a cheat code and was just enough to snag the one map, but nothing more. As for the grand finals, we got Zeta versus Falcons, what should have been an epic matchup between two Korean teams trying to prove they haven't fallen off compared to like T1 and All Gamers. Zeta and Falcons are two teams that should be desperate to show that they're not frauds. And well, Falcons may have done that, but Zeta looked absolutely tragic. I struggled to think of a single part that went right for them. Flora spent the first map just getting Reaper diffed by Merit, and then he spent the next 2 maps getting Tracer diffed by Proper. He did try some Freya, some Sojourn, but it was too late. At that point, Falcons were just running all over them to the point where it was almost painful to watch. Zeta just kind of went out with a whimper, if you can even say that much. But a bit of a fun fact that comes out of that, Zeta have now found themselves in a trend of missing every LAN by exactly 1 series. You can't call them the kings of second place, because obviously they're not getting second, but whatever curse they have here, it's impressive in its own right. Anyway, for the Falcons fans, good news, as that does mean they will be appearing at the Midseason Championship, taking the last spot of Group A, which is certifiably the group of death. That being said, the question does still remain. Will Stalker end up rejoining the Falcons for this tournament, or has the Merit Someone experiment done irreparable damage to the team? Being in the group of death, they will need every ounce of power that they can get, even if that does mean committing to the Devil Flex comps. But anyway, all that being said, that does wrap up the last chance qualifier. So now, let's talk a little bit about some player and roster news. First off, we have a bit of a tank shakeup in EMEA, as a lot of tank players have posted LFTs. First off, Heesung has posted an LFT, seemingly confirming that he's done with the ultimates already, which, I can't lie, doesn't really surprise me, but I do wonder if he'll be back in Korea or choose to stay in another region. And he's not the only Korean Winston to want to change, as Mag has also posted an LFT, but it looks like he's actually had enough of EU and he does want to go back to Korea. And honestly, I can't even blame the man after being locked in Diva jail for a whole stage. Get this guy a team that knows how to play dive comps, get him on Winston or Ball, and personally, I still have faith. And now this is completely unsubstantiated, but in a now deleted tweet, we saw Donghack suggesting that Mag may be going to Zeta. They do have Farmer right now, but a Mag Bernard tank line? Listen, tell me that doesn't sound kind of nice. But next up, we have Skytor and Willies, both the tanks of Quick Esports, also known as Dip vs. Gorillas. They are both looking for a team as well. Both are very talented, and I think Willies especially showed that he's very capable despite the team's struggles, so hopefully these guys will be able to find a home somewhere. Interestingly though, Tama has also posted an LFT, implying that he may not be sticking with Team Vision for Stage 3. People speculated that he may be getting released to make room for AMDP to be the starting tank since he is of age now, but AMDP actually posted an LFT as well, which makes it seem that they're not planning around him in particular. And if that wasn't enough, Vision's main support Alba has also posted that their LFT. So at this point, it kind of makes you wonder what exactly is happening there at Division HQ. None of these players have been released from what we know, but it's not a great omen. Now, speaking of main supports, Crispy is also looking for a team, and while he's not officially released, his bio does now read previously Gen G, so it would seem he's fully gone, and along with Mag wanting out of there, it looks like Gen G may be in need of a bit of a rebuild, which I mean, after the results, yeah, I bet. Now, outside of EMEA, we have Prophet, that's Little P, who has posted an LFT, looking like he's ready to make a return here for Stage 3, which I mean, thank goodness for that. He was sorely missed in Stage 2, given that I think we'd consider him a top hit scan at this point, and he is still a young player who can get even better, so he should be highly sought after. Also in Korea, looks like Pokerface may be getting some big changes, as both Missin and Karu posted LFTs. They're a very talented support line that honestly looked like with time, they could become a pretty legendary duo. Hopefully the team is able to weather the storm, since they'll need to make sure they can fight out of the Korean promotion and relegation, which they are currently in. And one last bit of news for the region, Onside did post their roster announcement, which is pretty early, all things considered, but they've made no changes other than seemingly having released Achieve, who was their formerly bench support player. Everyone else is still there, just the same as they were. As we stay in the Asia region, Please Not Hero Band did announce the signing of a new May 1 trick, Meizoramon, so keep an eye out for that to maybe shake things up. But the biggest impact to Japan will actually be 99 Divine, who've announced that they will be moving from Pacific to Japan. Now, there are no words yet on how this will change their roster. Chances are it may require a full rebuild, though I'd assume you retain Peppy and Izihan. But either way, it does mean we should be getting even more excitement from the Japanese region. Of course, the other side of that coin is that Pacific is going to take a hit, which is sad, straight up, but hopefully we see a new legacy maybe come in and arise in their place. Over in North America, SSG appears to have announced that Unter will actually be leaving them, presumably to pursue more content or hey, maybe even casting, after he did put on a pretty great show with Commander X there in the Last Chance qualifier. Now, I couldn't confirm this at all, but the streets are saying that Capitology may be making a return as a potential contender to kind of fill the spot left behind, and given how he put together so many great teams under Timeless, I think that he would be a great pick. And finally, one last bit of sad news. Wub Nation has fallen to its knees in parking lots around the world as Wub announces his retirement from Overwatch. He says he may be looking at going pro in Marvel Rivals or maybe pursuing a professional career in game development. Either way, as one of the oldest remaining parts of North American Overwatch, he gave us years of great highlights, participated in so many great matches. He will be sorely missed. But now let's take a look at what we have coming up next. And I'm sure you already know it because unless you've been under a rock, can't have missed it. It's the Midseason Championship, of course. Like I mentioned, our groups are fully set now, which we can see here with Falcons claiming that final spot from the Last Chance qualifiers. Matches will be kicking off on July 31st at 9 a.m. Eastern, but it's important to keep in mind there will be 2 streams with matches simultaneously. So while All Gamers vs Falcons is on Stream 1, Weibo vs Virtus Pro will be on at the same time on Stream 2, and vice versa for each of the following teams. So just something to make sure you're aware of. That being said, there is one more thing we have to kind of make this easier, as FaceIt Watch will be having multi-POV streaming, so you can see the game through the eyes of your favorite player. Make sure you go check that out, and you can even vote right now for the players you actually want to be seen on that. So hopefully you won't have to miss out on anything, and apparently you can even get some Overwatch coins from watching through that, so that's pretty neat. After the group stage, the playoffs will begin on August 2nd, also at 9 a.m. Eastern. And don't forget, Liquipedia can show you the match times in your local time zone. So if you're ever a bit lost, just check out the match times there and you should be set. And one more thing you can check out, OWCS does have a Pick'ems website, so make sure you go there, get your preds in, and see if you can top the leaderboards. Anyway, with that, we come to the end of our news day. A lot of exciting stuff covered, especially for the Tier 2 scene. And remember, with the current system, all it takes is one good stage of improvement for those Tier 2 rookies to become the next stars of OWCS, right? Now, for everything I've talked about, don't forget, links to everything can be found just in the description right down below. And that includes the Pick'ems website, like I mentioned earlier. And once you finish your Pick'ems, come join our Discord, where you can tell us why your predictions are right and why everyone else's predictions are wrong. Come join the community where we'd love to have you. Anyway, the Midseason Championship is nearly underway, and with 16 teams from around the world, there's going to be a ton to try and keep track of and to try and keep straight. But if you miss anything, there's no need to worry, because that's why I'll be here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you around in the future. Take care of yourselves.